Hi, I'm Charlie, an IBCLC specialising in breast and bottle-fed infants, and I wanted to record a rapid response to this news article because it's already been mentioned to me quite a few times, obviously a lot of concern. Let's start picking apart the fact from the fiction. Okay, so the opening says that tongue-tie treatment is an epidemic and that research has shown that many of these treatments are not necessary. The article then says tongue-tie may be overdiagnosed, a prominent doctors group reports. And that prominent doctors group is the AAP, or the American Academy of Pediatrics. Pretty reliable source, you might think. Except what a lot of people are not aware of is, despite on the surface promoting breastfeeding, they actually accept sponsorship and financial support from formula companies. So the multi-billion-pound industry that is infant formula, that only makes money if someone doesn't breastfeed, in fact every single breastfeed, is a lost formula feed, are funding this group of doctors giving this advice. What the Independent doesn't mention, either at this point or at any point throughout the article, is you will actually find an 80 or 90-year-old very often with a tongue tie. Why? Because they were all treated back then when people were breastfed and couldn't afford formula. It was essential people were breastfed. Tongue-tie treatments were done commonly. It went out of fashion with formula feeding, and now it's been proposed as a new thing or a trend. So we'll just pretend it wasn't referenced in the Bible and there aren't woodblocks from the 1600s showing us tongue-tie treatments. But let's go back to the article. It states that one of the co-authors of the study stated that there is research showing that many of the procedures are not needed. Now, if anybody can find this in the AAP statement, because I did go and find the initial document, but I can't find any research or the quoted research showing that a large number of procedures are not needed. There is absolutely a massive increase in identification and treatment, much like there is in autism and ADHD and things like that, because if something hasn't been diagnosed for a long time, when we start finding it again, it's going to look as though there's a sudden surge of this being suddenly appearing, when in fact it's just suddenly been diagnosed. We have hundreds of photos of parents with chronic tongue ties, teeth issues, jaw issues, because their tongue tie wasn't treated. They still had one. It wasn't not there because it was 30 or 40 years ago. They were just bottle fed instead. The article urges healthcare professionals to take non-surgical intervention first. I agree, absolutely. 100%, we should be looking at all the factors that are impeding an infant's feeding mechanism, not just the lingual frenulum. It next says there's no uniform diagnostic criteria, and the original article lists several tools that haven't been validated in research. They don't seem to make any reference to this one that has, though, for some reason. The article then states there's no consensus that laser is a better treatment than scissors, despite being much more expensive, which is correct, and then quotes a mum who had her baby treated by a dentist with a laser. She had the outcome she wanted, it resolved the problems, but she acknowledges she should have apparently spoken to her paediatrician first. If you're in the UK, your paediatrician is very unlikely to have training on tongue tie, in-depth training on infant feeding. This, of course, may be different in the US, but either way, it would seem the dentist made the right call if it resolved the problem. And should this mum have visited her paediatrician, perhaps when articles like this are hitting the news, it's only going to exacerbate the existing problem we already see, where parents are told it's a trend, it's a fad, it's overdiagnosed, and therefore their feeding might never have improved, the issue might never have been resolved had they not gone to the dentist. The paediatrician may well have talked them out of it. Then there's the usual predictable claims that there's a paucity of evidence, a lack of studies, which is absolutely untrue. Here in the UK, we've been studying this since the 90s, and you can see some of the studies here. Furthermore, we also have lots of studies into the impact of not breastfeeding and the risks of formula feeding in comparison to that. And therefore, surely medical professionals should be doing everything they can to try and increase the breastfeeding rates wherever possible. What's most baffling to me about this news article is this urgency, this warning. Despite there being no adverse or ill effects recorded, it's an incredibly minor procedure, and we're quite happy to heel prick test lots of babies, despite it causing them some discomfort, despite it being a tiny, tiny, tiny proportion of babies who will have the conditions they're testing for, the medical profession is quite happy to give a vaccination, knowing it causes some discomfort, crying, minor side effects, for an illness the child may or may not catch at some point, but the benefits are thought to outweigh the risks. When it comes to infant feeding, we do not value breastfeeding at all. And so what are we arguing against? What are we giving a warning for? The risk that baby might undertake a procedure after which they cry for an average of 12 seconds, according to the NHS, unnecessarily. And that can be negated by making sure that the person treating your tongue tie is someone specialised in infant feeding. The point is, this is purely looking at resolving a breastfeeding issue. We now have research showing that tongue ties impact on babies' bottle feeding. They can cause reflux, eryphagia, colic, crying. Where is the discussion around all those symptoms as opposed to giving drugs like omeprazole, lansoprazole, hypoallergenic formulas? Because the risks and side effects of these drugs are hugely significant. They are massively overprescribed. Where is the epidemic warning for that? Why are these healthcare professionals concerned about this thing, but not actually about these other things that are the alternative to that, which carry far more risk? The AAP even go as far as to claim posterior tongue ties don't exist, despite the fact we have studies showing that the release of them, this imaginary thing presumably, benefits feeding, reflux, colic as well. So I'd urge parents to do some digging about for themselves, not just believe the mainstream media. Come and check out our pages. It's milk_matters on Instagram. We're also on Facebook, and our website is milkmatters.org.uk.